Hello everybody, welcome back to SketchCraft Live, and I know how to turn on my microphone. I know how to turn it on. So this is a follow-up to a previous fan help stream that I did in the Art Tips playlist, fan help lighting discussion. If you go look this one up on the YouTube page, it's Art Tips, fan help, lighting Q&A. Kind of walk through. Dominique was is a follower of the show, and he asked for help on a Bucky O'Hare piece he was doing. So I gave him some options, and I did a bunch of, a little trickery to his piece and said, go in this direction. So apparently Dominic went in that direction and sent me a PSD and asked for some follow help. Let's see what he says. He says, hey Rob, how's it going? Would I be able to take a look at his Bucky work so far, get some feedback? He's drawn the final lines, laid down the flats, put some flat base colors down. It would be good to hear my thoughts on color schemes, and he's put some base shadows down using mass. So I have ways to go, but I thought I'd take a breath and see what your thoughts are so far. Also, I want my lines to be colored. I'll follow my art tips on it, yada yada. All right, so let me let's take a look at me for a second. Oh, hey, how you doing? All right, so let's just open this up. Now, I have not actually looked at this file yet. So let me just double click, and if this thing's filled with penises, joke's on Rob. So let's just keep layers. Oh, that's really dark. 1 second. Gray. Okay. Let's see here. What? Huh. It's pretty dark. Let me hit Control Y. Values preview. All right. So these are his base lighting values. Right. So yeah, I mean, I would say, the direction to kind of move in with this piece would be, where is this? 80% hard light? No, my friend. Should start closer to a 60%. Right? And we'll just put that on a multiply because it's pointless right now. What is this doing? Disable. What is going on there? Well, you've done additional work in that. Gee, let's put that right in there. So, yeah, I'd say, right now, like, probably the thing to do would be to figure out if you have a secondary lighting scheme, like if there's you gotta have something to cut out those silhouettes, something like that. Like if there's a planet above them, they could be lit from the top. Or, there's something along the rim there. Is immediately start to get those sort of silhouettes come out and then cut through, but develop your foreground, middle ground, background. So that middle ground's sort of cut up right now. I'm looking at your flats. So let's see where Big Gorilla Dude is. No. Roadship. No. Righteous. Bucky. Deadeye. Willie. Bruiser. So let's go right here. You know, a little bit of atmospherics. And then you pick the kid and check. Sorry guys, I'm just went outside. It was a little nippy outside. So we just, I don't know what is going on there. We should have the eyes and mouth. And then, so what you're trying to do is just break up these levels, you know? And you could turn that opacity down. Very slight gradients. So maybe that's like closer to a 30. And that's like, that's somewhere around there. It's a little lighter. You know, then if we take the whole selection, fill it with white. We'll just quickly set it to overlay and invert. And then you can just very quickly start to block in rough. You can clean this up later, but you know, just like quickly block in, you know, the lighting scheme as quick as you can. Turn the opacity and just 30%. Yeah. So I'm not going to sit here and do this for an hour. I just want to give you the, you know, break up these levels, you know, and then when you get done, like figure out where, you know, you want to sort of like rim light these little edges, you know, and then work in like this right here. And we want to not select him. So whoever that guy is in the right there, select inverse. You know, just want to cut out these silhouettes so you can see the characters. And then this could be, you know, he could be backlit or frontlit this way, right? Moving forward. And then pushing the focal point here, you know, so you need another level underneath him for highlights and stuff. So you're getting there. It's just, I think what it is sometimes, you know, when you get done doing flats and you do all that technical stuff, that you get kind of tired, you know, like you get real tired and you're like, I need to step away from it for a second. So what I tend to do, like when I was doing my own flats, is as long as this was something that didn't have a deadline, like I take it this doesn't have a deadline, I would take a step back, I have to give it a couple days, work on something else, and then come back to it. I would also recommend like doing your initial rough lighting scheme zoomed out, you know, and then cleaning up the lighting scheme after things are blocked in. Like they're blocked in, and then because if you're like zoomed in here trying to do these perfect little like, like you got the say you got the paintbrush and you're like, you're just never going to be able to get a sense of what's going on in the entire piece. So again, I would just really focus on what I was trying to do there was create this sort of like, he's got this down here, there's the guns going off, there's this backlight, there's a rim, it gets dark, let's create this little mood atmosphere up in here, and then making certain that you're not too, like, how do I say this, like, you don't want there to be a chiaroscuro painting where it's like super white and super dark in the same piece everywhere, like if I take this and we fill that in, set that to lighten, and I crank it up to 6%. Now that gives me some room to just go and add a shadow, and to block these guys in here. Like, not 100% black, like maybe like closer to like an 80%, So they're darkened, but they're not in like total darkness, And then you can obviously select the characters, and so you want two kinds of shadows basically. You want hard edge shadows, which are like dramatic lighting, and then a series of lighter gradients based on atmospherics. The gradients are based on atmospherics. And it's very subtle stuff. I would also separate those blacks from that 80% thing I just did, because that isn't helping life. That's what I would do, but I wouldn't set it so dark that you're working an entire image filled with shadow, and then you're like just trying to lighten the fuck out of it the whole time, I would start with a 40%, I generally start with a 40% black, and then move up to another 40 or 60%, and then work in the highlights and airbrushing the whites in like a 30% and like a 10% and like the nice super bright little speculars. So, you want the lighting and then the overall lighting. And then these characters sort of get cut out. And then individual things, like check this out. So if you got this duck dude here, right? You start to do things with the gradients, the atmospherics, where you can just quickly just sort of lightly airbrush a little soft shadow. So he's now behind Bucky, right? That's how you sort of pop Bucky out, and you kind of figure out the hardest part is figuring out like what your mind likes to do first, But I would say that just looking at it peripherally, if we go to the history window and I take a snapshot of this and I come back to that's really hard to start off. I mean, you're basically going from black and trying to paint in all the shadows, and that's not really the best thing to do. I don't think. I would again just take that right down. Well, let's just delete that for a second, and then right. So I see what that is. And then fill it with white and just lighten it up to about, let's say 5%. And then you can take your current shadow situation and just, it's black and white. You don't have to do hard or color burn or anything like that. You could set that at 60. You can do a multiply. That works. And that's a easier way to start right there. See? That's a much easier way to start. I think that's easier to start off with than that, you know. And then I immediately start to backlight. Like, you can't even see the background right now, you know? Like, immediately give yourself some room. You only want a ton of dark shadows when you're dealing with like real moody shit, like they're in a cave or something like that. But they're out in an open environment, so probably take this stuff. Select, invert. Give yourself a little contrast. You know? See? Some pretty good base lighting right there. So I will send this back to you, Dominique, and hopefully this helps a little bit. Um, you know, it's, again, when you have a multi-character piece, the thing to do is to don't get so focused on the small pieces as you're coloring. Work on the whole. Zoom out, work on a whole. Matter of fact, if you see a lot of my streams, you'll see I'm constantly like, the screen is zoomed out. People ask me all the time, how do you color like that? Or how do you draw like that? And, I mean, from my viewpoint, it's like the size of a big trading card. It's like almost 5 by 7 on my monitor. So it's not that tiny to me. But this way, I can focus on the overall, you know, emphasis. And then I can zoom in and do all the cleanup. Yeah, I can come around here and clean all those lines up and perfect them and stuff. But I mean, even that right there, if you just threw in a gradient map for the base lighting, reverse, you know, and tinted that. Take your characters. See, you start to get an idea of where it's going, right? So, but that's why I really focus on my color roughy when I'm setting these things up, because I do not like to figure this out at this stage. The piece is too well drawn at this point, and it's almost like my mind too can complete the drawing, and trying to figure out a developmental lighting scheme and developmental colors at this stage is very confusing to me. So that's why I get this down in the roughy, and then I transfer those gradient maps over, and I have all my, you know, all my flat colors picked out. Like, for my money, you know, I sort of feel like colors like this are a little, you know, they're a little too saturated for me. Like if I pick this red and make it more like that. You don't need multiple tones of red on Bucky's costume. You can just add shadows. I mean, like the skin I would get. But like this yellow is pretty muddy. That might be his color scheme in the retro book, which is fine. I would just say that, you know, like it's a little in the dark area. I would kind of neutral it out a little bit more. You know, and you could sort of see already, like, the difference between that and that, you know? So something to think about too. Your flats are a little in the dark saturated side, and flats are like supposed to be almost neutral colors, flattened colors, like the basic colors, because they're going to be lit. Like if you have, imagine if like this were an animation cell, you don't want him lit too dark, because if he's in a darkened area, he's going to be almost black. You don't want him too light, because if he's in a brightened area, he's going to be too bright. The character's going to absorb it. So you want their flat colors to be a little bit more neutral in terms of their, you know, their saturation levels and stuff. Would be advice. That'd be the advice I'd give. So anyhow, there you go. If you have any questions, folks, feel free to leave a comment or email me directly, rob@sketchcraft.com. I am currently working on Final Fantasy VII. That will be up soon. I have been doing all sorts of development. Like, can I actually draw this stuff that I'm going to be working on, you know, here? So on paper versus doing the whole thing digitally. So, and the answer is yeah. So I'll be getting to that real soon. I'll be back on in a hot minute to be working on some stuff. So I'll see you then. See you on the next SketchCraft Art Tips. Peace, folks. Do 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 do. Dum 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 dum. Peace, looking good. Don't give up.